folks, it's that time again.
It is.
Time for borders.
Borders.
I think our official theme tune is a bit more aggressive, but you know, that's your... How do you
I
describe that? Like
don't know, just like I just got out of bed. Borders.
Borders.
Yes, well, we're here today. Yes, interesting one. I think very, very topical this week, and it fits with me actually very well. I mean, as you know, Lee, I've got ADHD, which is attention hyperactive something disorder.
Well, if it's ADHD, then it must be attention deficit.
That's it, attention deficit. Well, there you go. You see, my
sorry,
memory.
I'm just,
no, you're absolutely right. My memory is crap, which fits in very well with this. But but what's interesting this week, and it's about bloody time, is that women are now being seen as kind of being the kind of ignored when it comes to ADHD. They were not being diagnosed. Many, and it turns out that 3 or 4 times more boys are diagnosed than women.
Okay.
But women present ADHD differently. So often they're inattentive, where boys bounce around like tigers on amphetamines. Mm-hmm. Okay, and though women do maybe show some of those signs, the big thing, and I think we've, both of us growing up with adolescence, of course, my adolescence was crap, was that many women go into other things. So, for example, there's this kind of, they work together with other things, like eating disorders, for example. And myself, though a male, I was bulimic when I was 16. And I made this question, well, that's an interesting one, that possibly that may be more susceptible to those kind of things. But it's an interesting one,
And then historically, women have always been associated with multitasking.
With multitasking,
but in a way, is that not actually potentially signs of attention deficit, having to constantly switch and do different tasks?
Well, that could be, and the thing is, the big thing for many of us is that we never finish tasks and we never finish goals, and that can make us very depressed. And I mean, many people with ADHD do suffer with depression, and also many, as I was reading the report today, that women do suffer sometimes with bipolar. I know with myself, I mean, of course, though, I've exhibited the more hyperactive. I mean, when we're having a coffee, I'm bouncing around, almost falling off my chair.
It's not even coffee, it's chocolate.
Just chocolate. I don't have coffee.
Just imagining you on the coffee.
I've actually had coffee, mate. I've been talked down off a ladder. No, I think that I'm just really glad.
Bang on, just clarify. So, what's regarded as like a attention span? Because the average human being, everybody has limits in terms of how long they stay. So do they have a particular kind of definition, like?
Well, I mean, it's limited. So I mean, usually after 5 minutes. I mean, people used to call me the trout. That I have 5 minutes, I'm off to something else.
Right. Okay.
And it's interesting because I know that my partner has got OCD. Which is, it's very much for things being really much in order, and there's rules and ground rules, for which you follow, and to the excessive. And I'm ADHD, which is absolutely hysterical.
It's an unusual combination.
Well, it's like the nun and the anarchist, that the nun's constantly trying to keep the anarchist in order, that he wants to go off and cause trouble.
So I suppose in a way you balance each other out, don't you?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think she has to sit down sometimes and get away from me just to kind of relax. I mean, it's interesting though, because when I was reading this afternoon, that boys are usually called, would say naughty boy syndrome. And I've got naughty adult syndrome. You know me, I'm always causing trouble.
Boys will be boys.
Boys will be boys. But you can't really apply that to girls, can you? You couldn't call a girl, oh, you've got naughty girl syndrome, because that would bring up other connotations and it would be seen as a negative thing. And obviously, all the sexist kind of connotations would come with it as well. But one of the big things I think I was watching something on the TV about women with ADHD, is that many get into trouble, and men do as well, with impulsiveness with spending. So I've never had any money until the last 10 years, because my partner, she now organises it. Until then I just spend like water. And so it's a really interesting, but I'm really glad it's come out. But see, the trouble is, a lot of people aren't diagnosed until, I was 50 when I got diagnosed.
Right, okay.
50. Yeah? most women get diagnosed in their 30s and 40s.
Right, okay.
So it's really I think it's interesting, and it's good they've been doing that. And
so what's kind of triggered that? So has there been recent studies that have kind of backed this up? Or?
Yes,
yeah.
There's quite a few studies that have been in the BBC recently, that studies that have come out now, and I think also that it's been highlighted through women who've achieved things and suddenly found out later that, well, that's why I had all these problems. So comedians, for example, and I remember a lot of male comedians who have been diagnosed with ADHD. I do some stand-up. I've got ADHD. I think it's a trait because we're able to jump from one thing to another, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
that sort of manic energy.
It is the manic energy.
That's what makes you excel at that particular role.
Of course,
I mean,
of course.
I don't know about Jim Carrey, but if you ever watched him, he's constant.
He's definitely on it. But
of
course, the other thing is that what they were saying here is actually that boys also maybe have got more coping mechanisms, possibly because they get more support. More coping mechanisms.
Generalization.
No, but they're just saying generally from what they're finding that boys may have more coping mechanisms, but also because I think this thing manifests itself in different ways, that it can be different because women have usually been they're seen as traits of depression rather than actually being ADHD. So the things that they manifest aren't seen as ADHD because it's this male diagnosis, which is possibly in the doctor's head, rather than a wider diagnosis. And I think it's an interesting one. But I think overall, what I found reading this stuff this week was about reflection and how that something that I found very useful as a teacher.
Yeah.
It's been great. But we mustn't see these things as a burden. They are a burden if society doesn't accept it and doesn't recognise it and respect it. But if they do understand, it's like dyslexia. I'm dyslexic. I mean, you know, you've got many companies now that just are like headhunting for dyslexics because of their lateral thinking abilities.
Yeah, yeah.
And the same thing with
very good visually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And with ADHD, it's like, you know, I'm able to jump, especially blended learning at the moment, blended learning. I can talk to the fellow there who's in South America. I can then talk, and I'm dancing on one leg. I may look absolutely eccentric, and I'm bouncing. But the thing is that attention deficit, where I can short spans of focus, actually comes to my advantage. So I think if there's anyone out there listening, you know,
I had to place bets on like who's going to be a more energetic lecturer, you or somebody else.
Yeah,
my money's on you.
Yeah. Oh yes. And I think the thing is though is that the students enjoy it, but also I think it's quite important that sometimes students, if they see someone like that and they get the idea they're ADHD, they sometimes feel that I can achieve things. Don't get me wrong. It's been a hard slog. Yeah. And, you know, I can look back when I just think, oh, why do I bother? And I don't always get things done as I wanted to get them done. And you know that. But that's the downside.
So I suppose it's on a spectrum and that, because obviously I guess some people take medications kind of suppress it, and then others
I did
live with it. So
I took something I like called Concerto. I love that name. Okay. And I had the lowest amount to take, which was 18 mils. Now, if you take the thing's 56, I took 56. Oh, but you feel that you can control it. It's wonderful because you feel like you're standing back and you go, oh right, that's what I'm. Oh, right. But I don't want to be like that because I do, but I'd rather use natural ways of coping. But I'm not scared of doing it. But what's sad at the moment is because of the reductions and cuts in NHS funding, I don't get any support at the moment. Right, okay. And that's the sad thing. So I'm hoping that now this report's come out, that women can access that report that fellas have for so many years. But I think it's great. We must not see women with ADHD as being something else. That I think teachers have got to start recognising it.
It never occurred to me that there was that gender imbalance in terms of diagnosis.
Yeah.
I mean, in all fairness, I can put my hand up. Honestly, I can't actually think of any female friends or colleagues that have ever said they've had ADHD.
I've got a dear friend. I've got a dear friend who's in Greece, and she's like me. partner has got a kind of OCD, and yeah, I mean, I didn't know she did, but she told me she did, and but she's a teacher, and she's a very energetic teacher, and she does great things, and of course she excels in things like acting and drama, all the things where
stuff that requires energy.
Energy, but also that creativity, that lateral thinking, which fits into other things. Of course, there is also the link with autism, but again, we've got to think of the spectrum. ADHD on the spectrum with dyslexia, dyspraxia. So, I've got dyspraxia. I usually go, you know me, I usually go into windows all the time, or into doors without them being open, But yeah, and that's it.
And I think it's relative to the context. So, for example, ADHD could potentially be seen as a negative if you were required to focus on one long, boring task.
Yeah, it is. But the big pitfall is things like organisation. We're usually disorganised.
Yeah.
Our time management is crap. Yeah. I teach time management, which is quite funny. Honestly. But the thing is, I suppose, because you've been there, you can teach students techniques on how to avoid those.
Yeah.
Obstacles that you found yourself, but with one's everyday activities, then, as you said, it's focusing in on the job, it's trying to get it done, but it's time we get rid of that stigma. It's like with dyslexics, and of course, when I grew up, it was that if you were from a more wealthy middle class background, and you were you had problems, then more likely you were dyslexic, or if they were down as your ADHD. But if you were from more lower, let's say, poorer background, working class background, often, as I experienced, you were regarded as thick, or you were going to go to prison because you were causing trouble. Yeah. And I think we've got to break that. We've got to break it.
Well, it just reminds me. I worked at a summer camp in 2016, actually doing video content making, and I remember walking past the breakfast table and these kids were like mid to late teens, and when I walk into the breakfast hall every morning, there used to be this table, and then it used to be jammed packed with boxes of medication. I said to her, what's all this stuff for? And she's like, these kids, they need Ritalin, they need this,
Ritalin, terrible stuff.
Huge list of stuff, and I was just like. I sat there and I was like, I'm ignorant on biochemistry and I don't know exactly what these kids need, but part of me just thought, I'm not sure all of them need all of that. So, and sometimes what is the actual, the root cause at that age? Are there other ways to intervene that aren't so kind of medicinal?
Well, it's just finding, I think it's more like the parents and the teachers being aware and giving the children or individuals time.
Well, there is that cliche, really, summer camps, it's where they dump their kids for 2 or 3 months.
They do.
Whilst they have a nice summer. And these summer camps are so expensive. It's thousands upon thousands.
I was an only child. The thing is, my mother always said I was worth 12. But naughty boy syndrome, I used to cover people in water, buckets of water. I used to do practical jokes. I was always jumping off things. I was an absolute nightmare. and I wouldn't wish me on any parent.
And that's the thing, if you look at that from an external perspective, is how does society and professionals deal with that?
Put them inside somewhere. On site, so we go on to the bond.
I love how we try and make these ham-fisted links between our topics.
Oh, we've got to be ham-fisted, my dear. I'm making a very, very tenuous link there between James Bond.
So we've got a bit of drugs, because I think there is a bit of drug taking involved in
drug taking. But I think it's an ADHD's paradise to watch James Bond.
That's true.
Because there's one thing going on all the time.
Different plots. 3 hours as well, actually. So I went to see it last week in the cinema. It kind of gets to the threshold where if I leave it any longer, I worry that I might accidentally hear or read a spoiler. So 3 weeks after release is normally my tolerance. Yeah, exactly.
I've done that.
So if you haven't seen No Time to Die, do stop listening to this now. I'll put a link when we move off the topic. But
the ending?
I don't want to ruin it in case people have seen it. So you've got literally a few seconds to wait or pause or skip.
Don't worry about it.
Anyway. So, so No Time to Die is obviously the final instalment for Daniel Craig, so he's now done 5 movies, and it came came to a, you know, and I think what's interesting about this particular incarnation is that he's one of the few Bonds that knew that this was his last one. A lot of the other ones, I think, are kind of on a per film or a couple of film basis, but they were never engineered as a send-off. So Die Another Day, for Piers, for example, looking back, was a bit of a send-off because it had so many references and it was very tongue-in-cheek and kind of over the top. But it was never written that it was his last one. No Time to Die, because the character dies, is categorically written as like the ending for him. You know?
Yes.
And yeah, no, I enjoyed it. My initial concern that it was 3 hours long was actually abated because I went in and it actually flew past the 3 hours. I remember getting numb bum during Kingdom of Heaven.
A numb bum.
Numb bum during Kingdom of Heaven. I didn't have that in this, so it succeeded.
It's just the rest of your body.
You
lost sensation everywhere.
So that succeeded. It was also kind of a bit of a salute to cinema after all the crap that we've all been through. It had been postponed many times. It needs to make $1 billion globally for it to break even. So it had a huge thing riding on it, and yeah, so it felt good to be back. It felt good to see it. It was nice to see Daniel Craig doing his stuff, and overall I enjoyed it. I think for me, if you look at his the films as a whole, I think for me still, I think Casino Royale and Skyfall are my favourite of his 5. I think Quantum of Solace is kind of, it has some interesting ideas in it, but the writer's strike I think really affected it because I think Daniel Craig had to write the script himself towards the end, which he said himself he's not even a writer. And Spectre I found a bit too overstuffed. No Time to Die is interesting because it feels like a continuation of and a wrapping up of a number of different things. It does a couple of shock things, like it kills off Blofeld fairly early on, which I wasn't expecting because he'd been built up as this huge kind of omnipotent villain, and then he gets killed off. So I was like, wow, so that was a bit of a rug pull. And you know the fact
he will come back though.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Oh, of course. I mean, he'll return, I'm sure.
In some form.
Yeah, some form.
You can't get rid of You can't get rid of Blofeld.
Well, I'm just saying, literally, in that world of the film, he
always comes back.
I'm saying, but in the world of that film, he was dispatched. He was gone.
Yes. Oh, that's nice. I want to see that then.
Yeah, and you know, it made this sort of link that he'd had a family with. So his partner that he's married, who we'll get on to in just a second. They've secretly.
You mean Bond's partner?
Bond's partner's secretly had a child, and but that's kind of kept under wraps for about half the movie. And I think for me, the biggest issue that I have with it is Eva Green set such a huge standard playing Vesper in Casino Royale that basically every other person he's kind of hooked up with just doesn't feel like the right woman for him, and that is the unfortunate case for, I think her name is Sidhu or something. I just can't buy the relationship. Whenever I see them kissing or whatever, and they're going, it opens up with this glorious honeymoon in Italy, and there's just something about the way that she always just looks very miserable. And you know, no disrespect to her if that's just the way that she is, but the character just strikes me as cold a lot of the time.
She's a psychologist though. She's very cold and calculated.
Maybe that's she. But I don't know. And the thing is, even Bond is still pining for Vesper after he visits her.
Who's an accountant? That's just the interesting thing. But the thing is, you've got to remember here. Was that, if I'm correct, is that this Sidhu, whatever she's called, she's French, isn't she? Yeah. Well, Eva Green's French as well, or mixed. I can't remember. But they're both from France, and yeah, I don't know. I think
there's just more chemistry between Vesper and him. It was funnier. It was.
Yes,
it felt like a fun relationship.
I think that's a kind of personality though of Eva Green. She's very good. She's quite you know, versatile like that. Don't get me wrong though.
Yeah.
I mean, Sidhu, I think I've seen in other films. I think she's very good. I saw her, you know. I think she was in Beauty and the Beast.
Right. Okay.
Oh, she was good in that.
Okay.
You know, but yeah,
it's just, and then the things, but what that does is that miscasting ripples out into other areas of the film. So he, at the end, he effectively basically sacrifices himself for his family, basically, and
so dies.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, I thought you knew this. I wouldn't do
Well,
this.
I knew,
So,
but I'm just going to say for the audience. My God, he's dead.
So, but however, it is extremely contrived how and why he dies.
Oh, I see.
So basically, in the film, they have a super DNA virus that basically can target people according to their DNA. So they can release it into a room and only kill like that one person. So it's like targeted kind of warfare.
That's fantastic. That's based on the South African stuff, years ago.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess they tend to extrapolate from real stuff.
They did, lots of experiments on that. Evil stuff, that. Yeah.
So the villain Safin, played by Rami Malek. I think he's got a lot of unfair criticism. I don't think he's amazing as a Bond villain, but I certainly don't think he's bad. I think he's done a reasonable performance.
Take his mask off.
Yeah. We'll go on. Yeah.
Anyway, let me just
finish this thread. So he's then in this he has a fight in this bathing pool thing where these viruses live or whatever. And Safin has blood of Sidhu's character and his daughter. And basically, in this fight, it's that if this blood gets into the water, then if Bond ever meets them again and comes into contact with them, they will die. So basically, he can never physically see them again.
Well, that's nice.
And I sat there and I was just trying to digest all of that. Okay, and then the rockets are heading towards this base, which he's ordered to blow up. He can't get off the island, and then it all blows up at the end. Now the problem is I sat there, and the emotional part of me, upset's too strong a word. The emotional part of me really wanted to feel something for James Bond's death. Okay, but the silliness of the narrative and his cold relationship with the woman, it didn't impact me. And I sat there and I actually felt disappointed at my own reaction, because I reacted more when Vesper was drowning in Casino Royale. I actually felt more of a pull. To have him die at the end, I felt kind of overall a bit like, that's a bit sad. But this emotional wave and the song No Time to Die, all that sort of stuff, it just didn't click with me. And I think it's because I don't buy their relationship. I don't buy their family unit, their love, whatever. It just didn't sit right with me. So that's why I can't give it 5 stars. Maybe 3.5, because it was a good time that I had.
But something which fits in, and this fits in very well with Mr. Sir Keir Starmer.
Okay.
He said the other day, I think James Bond ought to be a woman. Now, if you think about it, James Bond has now got a sprog, which is a female.
Yeah.
Yes. Is it Matilda?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Matilda. My name is Bond. Matilda. My name is Bond. Matilda Bond. There you go. We're going to have a female Bond later on. I think it's a wonderful setup.
But in the film they introduced his replacement 00, who's played extremely well by Latasha. She has the 007 designation. There's this kind of chemistry throughout, where she's basically irritated that he has the 007. He is the original 007.
Yeah.
But actually, as their character arcs continue, she actually gets it handed back to him, because she says, "No, you're the real 007." So it's kind of that moment of respect. So that's what.
And he dies.
Then he dies. So yeah, I think the choice of a female.
You got it back now, love.
Yeah. I think the choice of a female Bond is interesting. I don't know whether it'd be regarded as a bit gimmicky. I think Daniel Craig himself said it shouldn't be someone playing a female Bond, it should be someone just playing an entirely new female role, which I think is quite good.
I totally agree with that. I think this, and this is always controversial, is that I think if you start bringing in other groups into James Bond to change the book, then I think it's tokenism.
One of the biggest missteps they ever did, and I can't believe they didn't go through with it, is Halle Berry's character in Die Another Day, Jinx. She was so popular that the MGM bosses did actually write a script spin-off
she'd be brilliant.
Called Jinx. They apparently were all ready to go, and at the last minute they pulled because they were concerned about the budget, and that was such a mistake, because she, after Piers and her in Die Another Day, everyone wanted to see more of her.
But also she breaks that kind of white spy stereotype. I mean, she's black, she's female, and she's dangerous, and we need that. I think it's great. We should have more of that.
They should have made it at the time. Now it's too late, but a few years after Die Another Day, I think it really would have worked. And in this they've got a really fantastic but too brief appearance. I can't remember her name. It's Ariana. She's like a Spanish actress.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
she's on screen for about 10 minutes, but she lights the whole movie up, because she's a new agent, so she's all wide-eyed, and she's like, I've got 3 weeks of training, and she's always like trying to follow things by the book, and she's absolutely brilliant, and I hope she comes back as well. So overall, I think we've got like 5 minutes left, but I think overall the film done a number of really interesting things right. It done this new character, it done the 007 being just a number that someone else had, the shock death of Blofeld, the revelations here and there. but I think the emotional pull, the tug that the music, everyone was aiming for me, it just didn't land. So there we are. Halloween, yes. Halloween, as we know, is Sunday this year, so
yes,
I'm lucky enough. I'm going to 2 parties actually.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I'm going to go as Venom because we're talking about Venom, but I've got a lot of the gear already. I cosplayed as the Black Spider-Man a couple of years ago, so I'm going to use the body suit for that. I bought a latex mask off eBay the other day for the face, and then I've got some fangs that if I take the mask off, I can look a bit scary as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I think for me, Halloween, I like it because of the theatricality. I like the fact people dress up.
Yes.
But it's not just scary people. Like I know people like I've got some colleagues who are going as like a bumblebee.
Oh yes.
So it's not just scary. It's just a chance to dress up, and I like that. I like that.
Oh yes, and I was seeing a map yesterday about costumes which are prominent in each country, and spiders are one of the Spider-Mans is one of the most prominent. Even in Wuhan, by the way. Okay. But also, it seemed to be in Germany, if I'm correct, nurses. Dressing up as nurses for Halloween. Okay. That's an interesting one. But you see, Halloween for me, of course, it's got that kind of historical side regarding Celtic New Year. It's the beginning of winter. Yeah. In Cornwall, I think they called it Allantide many years ago. And it was very much the sort of beginning of the of winter, going through to the next and preparing for that, gathering apples up stores for. So I, for about at least 30 years, have always celebrated this that way.
How do you tend to celebrate?
Well, I usually kind of have a nice couple of nice jars of non-alcoholic cider there. And I will make a nice kind of either an oggy, a pasty, or something like that. But I will have something, meal, and I kind of.
I'm always a bit amazed at people who say that they really dislike Halloween or they really dislike Christmas. I know Christmas is difficult because it's more of an emotional family topic, but Halloween, it's like, I remember when I was a kid growing up and I had a screen mask that fired blood out the front of it. And I knocked on someone's door, and the effort you put in as a child, and then to get a really negative reaction, you just feel like crushed.
But it's a generational stuff.
I suppose it is.
It is because in your generation, it's very much trick or treat. Mine wasn't. Yeah. We had other things that we did and dressed up, but not to the same extent. I was reading the other day is that Jack-o'-lantern came over from Ireland, for example, into America, and then a lot of those things have come back over.
Our culture has been hugely Americanized.
It
not
is.
Just overall, but with Halloween, it's
but
a lot.
By the bases, it was the bases. It was the US bases in Britain, and the kids would go into the villages and trick or treat. Yeah. Often they'd be told to sod off because they didn't know what was going on, and it slowly, and other things, films and stuff. Halloween film spread out, and that's how it works. So it's part of our culture now, trick or treat.
Because actually, like All Saints Eve, it's actually about remembering the dead. So
it is.
It's interesting that the Halloween film has actually sort of monopolised that and actually associated with scary things. Well, actually, that's not actually the case.
No, it's not. No.
And actually, when I sat there and read it about remembering the dead, I was actually then starting to think about people that I know that have passed on. And
especially this year. Right?
Yeah, I never really actually thought about it in that context before. I'd always thought about it always just ghouls and goblins and almost fictional. And then actually thinking about people that we've lost overall. So yeah, it was an interesting shift slightly this year. I mean, I still do it because I enjoy it and it's fun to dress up. But actually, for the first time this year, I did actually think about people that we've lost.
But also the other thing is, we finish off now, is that traditionally we've always seen darkness as a negative thing and light as positive. Yeah. And I think that's come very much with Christianity, where in lots of cultures darkness was seen as the healing and seen as the kind of the nurturing. You know what I mean? Like night, you would rest and sleep. And so, this idea of the light of being a positive thing and darkness being a negative thing. I think again it's a way of cancelling out non-Christian cultures and non kind of Anglo-Saxon cultures like the Celts, for example. So it's an interesting.
And also it kind of unifies everybody because we're dressing up in goofy costumes. I mean, it's fun, isn't it? I mean, it gets people together. I've got 2 house parties in like 2 days. I mean, like would you normally have those? Okay, maybe, but it's that kind of people dressing up, and it's not just scary people. I know someone who's dressing up as like Batman. I mean, okay, that's not really Halloween, but he likes Batman, so I think it gives people that freedom.
I mean, in Europe, of course, I mean it's usually Easter time at Carnival. Yeah. So Carnival, they will dress up and go to parties, which is kind of like very similar to the Halloween kind of idea of dressing up. Yeah. We don't do that in this country. We do have something other times a year, Carnival, but not like that. No. no.
And it does seem to be quite unique to us, because I was on a call with China and I asked them about Halloween and there was nothing going on this weekend. So,
no, but like Valentine's Day, it is becoming, and Christmas, it's become more universal as a secular holiday. It's more for the commercialisation.
Of course. And there is a bit of that, you know.
And where does a lot of these toys and masks come from? Yeah. They're made in China.
Yeah.
So they're gonna wonder what's going on when they're making it. What's this kind of venom mask for? Oh, it's for Halloween. Yeah. There you go, my dear.
Yeah. Well, we're now out of time, folks.
We do, my dear. Yes.
Yes. We went from ADHD to No Time to Die to
Halloween.
It's quite compact this week.
It's very compact. Yeah. But I think we've got to say to everyone, enjoy Halloween.
Yes. Happy Halloween.
Yes. Enjoy Happy Halloween. Yes.
See you next time.
Bye.
Purge completed.